I'd sold about $100 million worth of real estate. So they called me Brisbane's $100 million man. There's a part of real estate which is the least glamorous and the part that most people don't like doing the most, which is prospecting. I got taught that you had to connect with 100 people a week. The guy that I worked for was ex-SAS, so he ran this real estate.
It was really 100.
Dan Argent, known as Brisbane's $100 million man, turned his real estate success into a game-changing venture with Urban X. Dan's vision and industry expertise has redefined the real estate industry forever.
If you're making $1 million a year, all of a sudden you're giving away $370,000 a year. You're sort of, is it worth 370 grand a year? You have to grow. You will grow or die. One little trick that I kind of figured out was if I just...
Dan Argent, welcome to The House Story.
Thanks very much for having me.
We always start at the beginning here at The House Story, and so I'd love to know about Dan as a school kid. So maybe you could take me back there.
Well, I still remember when I graduated from school and my teachers clapped. And so that'll give you a bit of an idea of what I was like as a school kid. Yeah, I think they thought that was a small miracle that I graduated. I did enjoy school. I think I'm one of those people that if I'm really doing something that I enjoy, I'll go hard at it. But I don't like doing things that I don't enjoy. And I think school is probably like 50% of that, or maybe more for me. I didn't care about learning about so many things that, we get to learn about. So I enjoyed the social aspect of it. It's probably too much, but I didn't love it. Yeah, it wasn't for me. So yeah. And I think that a lot of people are a bit like that, that probably that go into business as well. When you're really enjoying something and you love doing it, it's great. You can focus on that, rather than focusing on a myriad of things that you don't really love that much.
Was there anything you were drawn towards when you were at school?
You know what I wanted to do when I was at school? I wanted to join the police. And I wanted to join the police because I grew up watching a show called The Bill, which was this like old show on the ABC. And I just thought it looked like the coolest job. And so in year 11, when we did work experience, I picked the police and spent a week at different police stations and like driving around in police cars and I just like doing all sorts of fun things. And I just thought it was the funnest job. And then I got to year 12 and I don't really know why this happened, but I started to think about the actual realities of joining the police. And I thought, number one, no one ever calls the police on a good day. So pretty much you're only ever dealing with people at their worst. And two, the pay's shit. And so, then I had to like quickly recalibrate in year 12. And that's when I thought, well, maybe I'll pivot into law. And so that's what I was going to become after school in the end, was a lawyer. Yeah.
Okay. So teachers were happy to see you go and then you thought, okay, now I'm going to go become a lawyer.
Yeah. I think teachers were astonished that I made it all the way through because I nearly got kicked out so many times.
Wow.
Yeah. That's more so what it was.
Yeah, right. Were there any subjects that you were particularly interested in at school?
I enjoyed maths because that just made sense to me, but that was about it really. Yeah.
Okay. And how do we land at law?
Moderately connected to the police, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so then did you end up studying law?
Yeah. So I started studying law. So I finished school, went to uni, started studying law. And then an opportunity came up to take a gap year. Just a friend of mine had a job that they didn't really love. And it was really easy to defer your degree for a year. So we just thought, now's kind of like the time in life. This is at the age of 22 or 19 actually, take a year and just go and do whatever. So anyway, we both moved to London and lived over there for a year and just like had a lot of fun. But when I was in London, I had an office job. It was the first time I'd ever had an office job, and it was right in the centre of London at Trafalgar Square, and I was in a building on the top floor, and it had excellent views. And for those that know London in winter is cold and miserable and dark and shit, and in summer it's amazing. I think it's better than Sydney or Australia really, and the reason is because everyone embraces it. So the parks are packed, right? And yeah, it was just I was sitting in this office and I'm in there like 9 to 5 and I could just see outside and the parks are packed with people doing stuff. And I'm just cooped up in this office and I hated it. And that's when I realized I don't want an office job. I actually don't want to be like stuck in an office all day, every day. I want to be out and about. And I'd gone to school with a kid whose dad was a real estate agent. And I thought, and people had often said, you should get into real estate. And so, yeah, I wrote to him, my friend's dad from London, and said, like, I'm living in London. I'm going to move back to Australia, thinking about getting into real estate. Could we have a chat? And so he was open to that. And yeah, after a year, I moved back and had an interview and started pretty much straight away. So yeah, that's how I got into real estate, but that's sort of also like how law came to an end. I was really enjoying the degree, and I often like look back and think I should have finished it, and what would that life have been like? But yeah, I didn't want to work in an office. So
How far did you get through the degree?
I did 2 years at uni.
Okay. So still valuable, just didn't complete the whole thing.
Yeah, I just decided I didn't want to be a lawyer, and really, I thought I'd try real estate. So I took a gap year, and that was just like having fun. And then I thought, well, I'll try real estate for a year and see how that goes. And so I deferred my degree for another year for that, so I could easily go back. But after my first year in real estate, I was enjoying it so much that I just stopped deferring my degree and never went back.
Yeah, right. So why did you enjoy the first year so much? Because I think my understanding of real estate is typically that the first year is the hardest year, right?
What it was that I didn't grow up with any money. It was a very, my mum did her best, but it was, single mum situation. She had 3 jobs, and she just did her best to provide, which she did. But there was no like luxuries or anything like that. And we rented our whole lives and just had like an old sort of rundown car and stuff like that. But she worked hard so she could send me to a good school and we could live in a good area. And so I sort of had that like real hunger that I didn't want my life to, I didn't want to struggle like my whole life, because I'd seen my mum go through that. And so so then I moved to London, and I sort of didn't come from an environment with a lot of money or anything like that. Not just my own family, but like just my general environment. But I got to London and it was money everywhere, right? Like, especially like where we were living, we lived in this very good area, but to afford it, there were 8 of us in a 3-bedroom flat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there was 2 in every bedroom, and the lounge room was turned into a bedroom. So the only communal area was the bathroom and the kitchen. That was it, with 8 of us. So that's how we afforded this thing.
Wow.
So it was awesome living there, but it was, I look back now and I don't even know how we lived like that.
No.
But yeah, it was just like living in inner city London. You just saw money everywhere and this lifestyle that was available, and that like really opened my eyes to that as well. And so then when I did come back and I got into real estate and I started working for a top agent, and I was sort of his assistant and learning the ropes.
Is this in Queensland?
Yeah, in Brisbane. When you sell a house and the commission's like $20,000 and you think, oh, I could do this, and so for me, I thought to myself, I found the keys to the treasure chest. That's why I enjoyed it, because I thought I found the keys to the treasure chest. If I do well at this, you can do very well. And also my boss, not the agent that I work for, but the guy who owned the agency, the principal, the guy who I emailed from overseas. He was really good in that he taught me about goals in life. I'd never really like known a lot about goals. He's had this quote, which is that you can have anything you want in life if you set goals and work hard. And I'd learned about working hard from my mum, but I didn't know about this thing, goals. And so he taught me to, have little goals and big goals and medium goals, and, where do you want to be in 10 years, and like write it all out, and you're just writing so you can really write whatever you want. And so I just wrote this list, I want an inner city apartment, I want a Porsche 911, I want this. It was all this, this list that at the time I was 20, was pretty extreme. And so I sort of had my goals and I could already work hard. And then I saw this industry, which to me was like a real treasure chest, because if you worked hard and you were good at it, you could actually achieve all those things on that list and more. And yeah, so that's why I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And I think I was a little bit like duck to water when I got in as well. It made sense to me, sort of what you do. And there's a part of real estate, which is probably the least glamorous, and the part that most people don't like doing the most, which is prospecting, like just getting on the phone and calling people. And I got taught that you had to connect with 100 people a week minimum. So that's your job. You've got to connect with 100 people a week, and you've got to fit that in around all your other responsibilities. And the guy that I worked for was ex-SAS. So he ran this real estate.
It was really 100.
Yeah. Like 99, you might get shot.
Yeah.
Like it was 100.
Yes.
And that discipline I'm so grateful for, because if I was at 99 on Friday afternoon, I was back there on Saturday afternoon after our open homes making calls to make sure I got my 100th connect. So when I had to hand in my call sheet on Monday morning, you would not hand that in at less than 100.
No,
you would not.
It wasn't happening.
It was not happening. And so, that was a real discipline that I think 1% of the industry has. Yeah. So I was really like blessed to like get that kind of, at the time I thought it was a pain in the ass, but I look back and I think, oh, I'm really grateful that I got that. Yeah. So I think, but I understood that the calls led to meeting people that have a house that might want to sell, led to listing that house for sale, led to showing it, led to getting offers and selling it, which led to getting paid. So it all started with those calls. See, the calls get the meetings get the listing gets the sale gets the commission. So that when I say the keys to the treasure chest, it was like, oh, if I can get really good at making these calls, I'm going to be able to generate so much business. And that's what I think I got really good at in that first year.
So is it fair to say you got extremely disciplined through that process working for that individual? Do you think that you had that in you before, or do you think you really got it out of that
I
relationship?
could work hard because, that's all I'd ever seen, and even growing up, I used to like work through all the school holidays and stuff like that. Yeah, that was like never really an issue for me, but I did definitely get the discipline. Yeah. That 99 is not a pass. It's 100. And then I think the other thing, and maybe that was like my own thing, but was it's all well and good to make 100 connects, but then you start to look at your conversion rate. So if I get 100 connects and I find one person that will meet with me, that's a lot of work to get that. So then you start to like refine your script and your tone, and there's so many little things that you can refine and do. I mean, one little trick that I kind of figured out was if I just say, "Oh, hey Tate, it's Dan from, whatever." And they'd be like, "Oh, hey Dan." And it was like literally just a tone thing.
The tonality.
Totally changed the dynamic, because now all of a sudden they're like, shit, this guy knows me, but I can't remember who he is, but I better be polite because he knows me. And I didn't know them. I'd never spoken to them before, but I just changed the way I made the call. And all of a sudden, oh yeah, come around. And they're probably thinking, who the was that?
Yeah.
But, these little things, then you start to track your conversion. Okay, well, I'm getting a meeting every 10 calls. I've got that down to a meeting every 8 calls, and you just start to get better and better and better.
Were you reading books to improve, or listening to anything, or was it just natural instinct going, hey?
No. Reading. Yeah. Like reading, listening to podcasts. There was a CD series out back then by a guy named Lee Woodward. I can't remember what the series was called now, but I remember him. But like that was like full of, good things. I remember I got Zig Ziglar's 101 closing techniques. Have you got it?
Oh, no, I don't. Not here. I've got it at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you'd find like the trial close and this and that, and you think, oh shit, like I can use that. So there was that, and then just like trial and error as well. Yeah,
Yep. So are you generally quite competitive?
very extremely.
Yep. Did that come from school, parents?
I don't know. I was never into sport. I'm still not. I find sport funny. I kind of just think give both teams a ball. But like, I do understand the concept and the competition. I guess business for me is sport.
Yeah.
I think I just like to win, and I think that the competition is what makes it more enjoyable. We were even playing like Monopoly Deal the other day. If you've ever played that, it's a great card game. And so we just started like putting like wagers on it. Like whoever loses has to buy Yogi, but it just made it more fun all of a sudden. So yeah. And I think the more you win, the more competitive you get.
So how long did you then work as a real estate agent?
Yep. So I worked as an associate to the agent, as his like right-hand man, really. I did that for, it was a bit under a year. Supposed to be a full year, it was a bit under a year. He ended up, the agent that I worked for, not the principal, but the agent that I worked for ended up resigning and getting out of the industry for a little while. And so, yeah, that was just like a bit of a fork in the road for me, because I wouldn't say that I was ready yet, but it was kind of like, well, the guy that you work for is no longer here, so you can either step up into his shoes, or I didn't really know what the other option was. And so that's what I did. And it was so interesting how much I'd learned off him during that time, more than I realized. Like I just then had to start listing my own properties. So I wasn't listing properties then. Before that, I was finding them and then going to the appointments, but he was doing the listing. But then, so when it was my job to go out and meet people that wanted to sell and convince them that I was the best agent to go with, all this stuff just came out of my mouth. And I was like, oh, where's that? But it was, I guess I'd just been like absorbing. That was the other thing that they said, keep your mouth shut and your ears open. Your job's just to be a sponge. I think it was 9 months I worked for him, maybe 10.
Good advice.
But yeah, like just learn. Like I don't want you talking. I don't want you saying anything. I don't want you butting in. Just sit there and listen and learn and be a sponge. And I guess that's what I must have done, because all this stuff just started coming out of my mouth in my very first appointment, and I got it. And then it had been on the market for months with another agent, and I took it over, and from memory, I sold it in 3 days, or it was like maybe a week or something like that, but it was very quick. And the owner was so impressed. And that lady, her parents owned building management rights. And they didn't like selling. They just liked managing the apartments within buildings. And so and she was like, oh, you've got to meet my parents. And then so her parents just gave me every seller in that building.
Oh, wow.
And so, I think there was like 75 apartments in that building, and I reckon I would have sold 80% of them or something like that over the years. Yeah. So she was like a whale of a first client.
Yes.
And then
What a win.
yeah, it was a huge win. Yeah. And there were just numerous other ones of those. So, yeah, so then I became an agent, and all up from start to finish at that agency, I was there for 7 years.
Wow. So acting as an agent.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. And so then did you have to go through the process of building your team as part of that?
Yeah. So, there's these levels that really, I mean, when you're a real estate agent, you are trading time for money. So you do get to the point where you can only handle so much at a time, because there's so much that needs to be done, right? Like you've got to make the calls, and then you've got to go and do the appointments with people. And then if you do win that business, like there might be work that needs to be done to the property that you need to get organized, and then you get the marketing done, and then you get it on the market, and then the calls start coming in, then you got to show it. And then, when someone buys it, there'll be like a building and pest inspection, and the bank will send a valuer out, and the buyers want to go out and measure the fridge and whatever, all this stuff. And then there'll be a pre-settlement inspection, and there's settlement and dropping off the keys and flowers and whatever. And and so across like volume of properties that you're handling, you just sort of run out of time. And the thing that nearly always gets dropped is that prospecting part, right? Because you've got all these houses now, and you're so busy running around with them that the calls drop off. And then you sort of get all those properties sold, and you think, shit, I've got no properties to sell now. It's because you weren't making calls. And, there's a real sort of like 30 to 90 day lag, or probably 60 to 90 day lag really, because by the time you sort of stop making calls, you've still got all this activity, and you sort of think, oh, I've gotten away with it. But then it catches up with you hard, because then you sell all that. You weren't making calls 90 days ago. So you've run out of opportunities, and you're like, oh, now I've got nothing. And so like a lot of agents' incomes just go up and down. They'll have a month where they make 100,000, they'll have another month where they make nothing, or 10 or something like that,
Yeah.
And so, and it's a bit like an old manual car. Like when you're on your own, you start to redline, and that's what I did. And I don't remember the number. I think maybe it was around 400,000 a year in commission, something like that. And anyway, so I reached out to this top agent, and who was on the Sunshine Coast, and she met me for lunch, and she said, oh, the problem's simple. You need an assistant. So I think that that sponge thing that I mentioned, like I've always tried to really embrace that. The guy that I worked for those 7 years, the principal, he said that was, a real trait that he valued in me. The sponge thing was because, if I hear something and it makes sense, like I'll just do it. Yes. So by the time I got back to Brisbane from the Sunshine Coast, I'd already hired someone. So I kind of felt like if you get that advice and it makes sense, like just act on it. So I hired someone, and she came on, and then she started managing my database, which freed me right up to just do the other work. And then, sort of like doubled after that. And then, to get up over $1 million needed another team member. And so then the three of us, got to that next stage.
And so there was no hesitation in hiring your first team member?
Well, I suppose there had been before I had that meeting, but then when I had that lunch with that lady, and she was a high performer, and that's what she said I needed to do, then like I'm not really like one to question that. It's just like it made sense. I need someone managing my database while I'm out doing, all the other stuff. So yeah, I guess there had been hesitation before that because I hadn't done it, or maybe I hadn't got the clear enough advice. Like I don't really remember it at the moment because it was maybe 15 years ago or something like that. But when she said to do it, I just got straight on the phone and called someone that I knew that was really good at doing that, and shit at that other part that I was really good at. And so that's all I needed her to do, just manage my database, because, the calls weren't happening when I was getting busy. And she used to be a nurse, and she was just great at that nurturing kind of thing. And so she'd just get on the phone and have conversations about all sorts of stuff, which I would never do, but she was nurturing it. And then when they were ready to sell, she'd be like, oh, Dan, you need to call this person. They're ready to sell. It worked great.
Okay. And she was with you for the full 7 years or a large part of that?
No, she ended up getting out of real estate, and I think she went back to nursing. But then that sort of just really started the journey for me of bringing people on, and so then, like, pretty much from that point on, all up, I was in real estate for 14 years, and she probably, I think I would have brought in a team member maybe at like year 3 or something like that, but yeah, so for those next 11 years, I always had a team.
Okay. And then at what point did you decide I'm going to do UrbanX? Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, that's a few steps down the road. So when I joined the agency that I worked at, my boss said, write down those goals. One of those goals was I wanted to start my own agency. And
Why your own?
yeah, why my own? Well, because I said my mum had 3 jobs. She had 2 jobs and she had a business that she worked in as well. Her
Side
own
hustle.
business, right? Yeah. So I'd always like seen that from the time I was a little kid. And so that just made sense to me that once you're good at something, you work for yourself. I kind of didn't really see any other pathway or option than that. Well, I suppose the other option is that you just keep working for someone else forever, but that's not what I'd seen. And so I think, yeah, once you get good at something, that is the logical next step. You just start working for yourself and set up your own business. So that's why I had that in there. As the years went on, there's a real kind of crossroads when you're building a career in real estate. When you start out, you know nothing and you know no one and no one knows you. And so you really lean on like your principal to teach you a lot, and you lean on the brand of the agency because they might never have heard of you, but they've heard of your agency that can like get you in the door. If I just started Dan Real Estate like on day one, they'd be like, but then as the years go on, I mean, I probably used to call my principal like, I don't know, 5 times a day or something like that. But then as the years go on, you might call like 5 times a month or 5 times a year, maybe. I mean, as you learn more, there's less and less situations you've never been in. And so you just know what to do. And so you don't have to call and ask for so much help. And so like that sort of starts to drop off. And then you're building that referral network, like that first client I gave you. I mean, they didn't even know my boss. They couldn't have cared less. Once I had, I don't know, dozens of those connections giving me referrals and then coming back when they needed something or whatever, you've got your own, I guess, book of clients. And so the brand of the agency you work at starts to become considerably less valuable. So now the advice is less valuable, the brand is less valuable, and you're sort of just like getting more and more capable, but the remuneration doesn't really match that, right? And so you're sort of still stuck giving away 40 to 50% of what you make, which is,
Is that high?
the model. Yeah. So I was on 60 of 90%. So they took 10% off the top for corporate marketing. And then of the 90%, I got 60 of that. So that would work out at 53 of 100% effectively.
But that's quite low.
That's totally standard.
Is that right?
Totally standard. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some agents that I talk to, they're on 50 of 90. There are some that are getting up to like 60, 70%. But, even if you're on 70%, if that's of 90, that's still only 63. So you're giving up 37%. And, if you're making $100,000 a year, it's kind of nothing. But when you're making, $1 million a year, let's just use an easy number. If you're making $1 million a year, all of a sudden you're giving away $370,000 a year. You sort of go, is it worth $370,000 a year? I don't know if it is, that's a lot. So yeah, as the years ticked on and I was sort of just giving away more and more, it sort of started to like really think, do I like need that? And maybe now's the time. So I reckon it was from probably year 5 onwards, I wanted to go out on my own, but I didn't feel ready. And the reason I didn't feel ready was just confidence. It was just confidence because whilst you've got that dynamic that I shared with you, where at the start, no one knows you, you don't know anyone, you don't know anything. Over the years, that all changes, at least for me, but I think for a lot in the industry, there's still that little voice in the back of your head that says, yeah, but what if the business that you've got is coming because of where you are? And what if you leave and, 100% of nothing's still nothing? So then you sort of freak yourself out. And so, yeah, like year after year for the next couple of years, I was really keen to go out on my own and start my own business. But I just had so much self-doubt that if I do it, it'll all fall in a massive heap. So whilst I was on 60 of 90, so 53. So 53 is still a lot of what I was making. And so then you sort of start to weigh up, well, if I lose all of that versus fail, which one's better? So for the next 2 years, I just persevered where I was and I guess, just kept like growing as an agent where I was. But that was right up until 2010. In 2010, two things happened. The first thing that happened was I won Queensland's #1 agent. And it was the first time an agent in Brisbane had won that award in, I don't know how long, but a very long time. It had often been won by agents on the Sunshine Coast or Gold Coast.
Wow.
That agent that I went up and saw years earlier on the Sunshine Coast to get that advice around hiring a PA had won it 3 times. So that was like a really big deal for me to win that award.
Yeah, wow.
And because no agents in Brisbane had won it for a very long time, the local media got right behind it. So there was a local newspaper in Brisbane called the City News, and they gave me the front cover of the entire paper and a double-page spread inside.
Gee.
And at that point in time, I'd sold about $100 million worth of real estate. So they called me Brisbane's $100 million man, and they superimposed this picture of me with all these like on a Monopoly board with all these Monopoly houses around me. This is like all before AI. And then there was this big double-page spread on the inside, and it just talked about like my story and my career and all this kind of stuff. And the week it came out, I had $10 million worth of people call me.
Wow.
Yeah, just like, oh, hi, I've seen the thing in the paper.
Press.
Yeah, we're thinking about selling. Can you come around and chat to us? Up until this point, 7 years in, my business had been built on calls, prospecting, which I learned all the way at the start, and just hustling and hard work. And then once I got clients, nurturing them and getting referrals and making sure that I was there on the option when they were ready to do something else. But then in a week, I get $10 million worth of people just calling me saying, yeah, we want to sell. And I'm thinking, fuck, this is good. What's this? And that's like when I started catching on to this personal brand thing and how powerful it is. And actually, if you can just market yourself, people will come to you when they want what you do. And so I hired like a bunch of people, like a PR agency and I think some digital marketing, and I should have come to you, but didn't know you. And, you know, we did all this stuff and, you know, just started like growing my brand. And, you know, the agency that I worked for really like put the brakes on that. They didn't love that. There was not enough of their brand getting out and there's too much of my brand getting out. And I just started to feel like the tension was building there, and I was being limited from how hard I wanted to go, and this new thing that I'd worked out was super powerful. So that tension was building, and and then I got my tax return, and I'd written like around about $700,000 in gross commission income that year,
Which is huge.
In 2010, it was huge. Today, it's like no, not huge at all, but in 2010, it was huge.
Oh.
And so, but out of that, you know, 10% had gone to this corporate marketing thing, which really had no benefit to me. So we're down to 630. And then I got 60% of that, probably like 470 or something like that. And then, so that was like my cut, but then you pay for your own super. So then that brought it down to like 430 or something. And then I had to pay for my own assistant. So that brought it down to like 350. And then you pay tax on that. And so that's like a third or more. And so I ended up with like high ones or low twos, which is still like good money, but not out of 700. And so like I'm looking at this breakdown of where the hell my 700's gone,
and the wheels start turning.
And then you just think, oh, you know, super, okay, that's the government, and tax, that's the government. PA, like, you know, I wouldn't be at the level I'm at without that. So I need that. Fuck this, you know, 300 or so grand a year I'm losing. Shit, that's a lot now. That was it. That was it for me. So it was like August or something like that, 2010. And I just started putting all the wheels in motion to start my own agency. So yeah, I worked there till the end of that year. And then I used Christmas as like my break period. And I launched what was Urban Property Agents. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was my agency, Urban Property Agents. And I launched that January 2010.
In Brisbane.
In Brisbane. Yeah.
Okay. And then you did that for
7 years.
Another 7 years.
Another 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then after that, you then went into
Urban X.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I learned running my own agency was that it was everything that I wanted it to be. You know, I was able to have my own brand, and we had a lot of fun, like sponsored everything, a lot of social media, a lot of merch. We got all these caps made and just had boxes of they came in boxes of 20. So I just made sure I gave away a box of 20 caps every week. And you just see people walking around the neighborhood wearing, your urban hats. We did a lot. And so all that marketing and creativity that I had inside me, I had no restrictions anymore. You could just do it. So that was awesome. The difference financially was profound because all of a sudden you're not just giving away so much. And I didn't change my lifestyle. Two things happened. Because I was able to market myself so much, my income grew. So then that grew from 700 to 1.2 million, or a bit over 1.2 million. So there was an extra like $500,000 there.
How long did it take to get to the 1.2?
It took a couple of years, yeah, but I was like incrementally kept increasing. There's like an extra $500,000 plus there's, the 300 that I'm not giving away. So, there's like a lot, and I didn't change my lifestyle at all. And all I did with that was just invest. So I was like just bought houses and apartments and shares and like just all appreciating assets and worked to pay them off because I didn't want to like have lots of assets but not own anything. So my thing was buy assets and pay them off. Then you own them, and they're going up in value. So I used all that extra money to like totally change my life. I bought my mum a house because I mentioned like we'd rented our whole life. And so like to be able to buy my mum a house was just like the most meaningful thing ever. And I also built my own rent roll, which, when you're in real estate, when people want to rent out their house, you can do that for them. That's a management right. And you can sell that management right. And so say you're paid $2,500 a year to manage that property commission. You can sell that for about 3 to 4 times to a different real estate agency. So that one property that you manage has the management right has a value of maybe $7,000 to $10,000. It all depends on like a lot of metrics, but roughly.
So this is not of net profit. This is of the revenue of whatever that right is.
Yeah. So you rent out a property and you get a percentage of the rent.
Yep.
And say all up over the course of a year, your percentage equals $2,500 a year, right? That's what you charge to manage that property. But you could sell that management to a different agency and get like say 4 times that. So then you can sell that one management for $10,000 to a different agency. Then they take over managing it. That's what they've paid you. And so you build up 100 of those a year. You're building like a seriously $700,000 a year asset you're just building. And then so if you do that for like 5 years, you've built or 10 years, you've just built a $7 million asset that you can just go and put on the market and some other agency will buy it off you. So I did that, and then I started attracting other agents to me. I grew agents, so people worked for me as like my associate, and then I would turn them into agents. And then over time, other agents started coming to my agency, and so I grew into this amazing business in the area where we were, which is a very blue chip. Great area. We were number 1 for 6 out of the 7 years that I had that agency.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And so then you were there, you did that for 7 years?
7 years. And at the end of that, I was so burnt out for one reason. And that reason is this: when you're a very good real estate agent, your best use of time is dealing with people that have houses to sell and people that want to buy them. And the more you do that, the busier you are, the better agent you are, the more you make.
Sure.
But when you've got your own business, there's a lot more to it than just that. And so the biggest pain for me was managing that operations of that agency, particularly a lot of people don't know this because, you watch any of the shows on TV and you just see people driving around in nice cars showing houses and like that's kind of all they show. But there's an incredible amount of administration in real estate business. Like on a transaction, there are so many steps that the agent, probably doesn't do, but the office has to do, or an administrator has to do. There's a lot of administration steps. It's one of the few industries that manages other people's money and therefore has a trust account. Running a trust account's can be incredibly complicated. You've got to like with receipting, you got to set up a new ledger for every single listing, or someone's like 2, one for the listing, one for the sale. You get money in, you've got to run that down to 0. You've got to, reconcile every month. You've got to be audited by external auditors multiple times a year. but they'll just come in and ask for random files, and you got to make sure every single one of those is on point. If it's not, they've got to lodge a report with the state body. Like there's a lot, right? There's a lot. And I found the people that do that to be a revolving door. And managing that when you're already flat out listing and selling is a total, for me at least, was just it was too much. Yeah. So I just really, it was like task saturation for 7 years. And at the end of those 7 years, like I reached a point where like I was going to break, and it was either just keep selling as an agent, but go back to an agency and just do that for someone else, or keep my agency, but stop selling and just run it. Continuing to do both was no longer an option.
That's quite a pivotal moment though.
It was a hugely pivotal moment. And I didn't want to go back and work for someone else because I'd already done it before. And like, just, and then it'd be worse now because I haven't worked for someone for 7 years at this point in time. So it'd be even worse than it was before. And so I thought, no, that's not for me. I'm just going to run the business and the operational side of it. And then it struck me that there were 10 offices in my street. And it struck me that every single one of those 10 offices had exactly the same operational requirements and challenges and infrastructure that I had. And I thought, shit, that's inefficient. Like, and because that's just my street. But like, if you like zoom out and imagine how many real estate agencies there are around Australia, they all need essentially the same infrastructure. It's just repeated over and over again. And I was like, that is so inefficient. So if we're just going to do that, maybe we could just offer that as a service to either people that already have an agency or high-performing agents like what I was at that point 7 years prior that want to get into their own agency but don't want to do all of that. And that's how UrbanX started. UrbanX started as a platform that takes care of all of the operational side of an agency, so that the principal or the agent who wants to become a principal can just focus on what they like really good at and enjoy, and we can do the rest. Yeah. And I kind of liken that to like Formula One, right? So, you've got, say, like Lewis Hamilton, his job is to drive around the track at 400 Ks an hour. It's not his job to manage the pit crew. It's his job to pull in a couple of seconds and bang out and go and do it again. Someone else is managing that pit crew for him. That's not his job. And I don't imagine any of his headspace is going into that whatsoever. And if it was, would he be winning races? Probably not.
No.
You'd be coming in going, fuck, I hope Jeff came to work today, otherwise my tire's not going to, like you would, it's the same thing. The guys that we work with just get to focus on what they really enjoy, what they're really good at, what makes the money, and we look after the rest.
So it was a big challenge for you, and then you kind of spotted the opportunity and you thought, you know what, I'm going to try test this out, see if others are interested.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was a challenge for us, but it was a test in a way. At the time, I must have been 34 or something like that. But I started that agency when I was 27. So I was, I guess, at the time, like one of the new gen that was like opening their own offices. Because, like I was 27, but then probably a lot of the other people that own their own offices at that point in time may have been like, I don't know, 45 or something. And so I was like one of the first new gen, but there was a few of us, around, not just in my area, but around. And we also like knew each other and talked and stuff like that. And all of them that I talked to that had opened their own offices had either gone backwards in their commissions because they weren't focusing on like the dollar productive work because they were too busy and distracted, or they did continue on, but their personal life had suffered. They were divorced, they were overweight, like health issues, like whatever, right? Burnout. And so it wasn't like just, oh, this is only a me problem. I sort of realized, hey, like pretty much everyone I talk to is saying that they're like overloaded now. And I think the Formula One analogy makes that pretty clear. And like if you go flying, the pilot doesn't like put it on autopilot and come out the back and like do the food. They've got their job, the whole thing just flows. But in real estate, we sort of think we can just do everything, but you pay a price. So it was a bit of a test, I guess. I had, at the time, I think I had 9 agents working in my agency, plus myself and like my team. And so they were like our first. Yeah. I just sort of said to them one day, look, I'm not continuing on with urban property agents. This is what I'm going to do. And I'd like to help all of you guys get into your own business for yourself. And I'll continue to do the back end. We were already doing the back end for them, so it was a pretty easy transition. But they got to have their own brands rather than operating as urban property agents. They could have their own brands because we're white label, and so that was like a big appeal because everyone wants to be able to market themselves nowadays, and they could keep more of their commission, and we would do all the back end for them. So yeah, so we got started with them, and some of them were like pretty high profile. And so people sort of saw them go out on their own, and they were like, oh, well, you know, they've gone out on their own. What's going on? They've left Urban Property Agents. Oh, hang on. No, they're powered by Urban X. What's that? And then, so then all these other like high performing agents off the back of those people started to see what we were doing and contact us and say, hey, I've seen you doing this and helping these people. I want to have my own business and my own brand. Can you help me? And then it just grew from there. And then COVID really was a big kicker, because, you know, all of these agents all of a sudden, and when COVID hit, the market died for like a week, and then it went like kaboom, because I think everyone was at home. So what do you do at home? You get on realestate.com or Domain and you start looking at real estate, and the market went mental, and agents worked out how you could adapt and still do showings and this, that, and the other. And yeah, the market just flew. But all these agents have been kicked out of their offices because they couldn't work in their offices. They're all working from home, and they're thinking, well, I'm already working on the road or from home. I'm not even at this office that I'm paying 40, 50, whatever % to. Maybe I should just work for myself. And so, yeah, that like really helped to explode us.
Okay. And I'm assuming that after you had all these agents jump on, there was a moment for you, Dan, where you were like, oh, I have to service all of this.
Jeff Bezos has this quote, which is size breeds chaos. And, you know, like I really experienced that as we grew. It's all like well and good when you've got like 9 clients and then 30 clients. But then when you go from like 30 to 50, the systems that you had at 30 don't work. I mean, probably at 30, the systems we had at 9 didn't work. 50, the systems we had at 30 didn't work. You know, at 75, the system, and then you get past 100, so it's all about, I guess, like the scalability of your systems and your processes and your workflows, and then the quality of your staff and how many staff at a high level you can get, and then their training, and then the culture that you drive across the whole business. So, I mean, there's been Urban, we've been going now for 5.5 years, and there's been so many growing pains through that period, more growing pains than I've ever experienced in anything else that I've ever done. Because, you know, I got into real estate and you just learn, and it's gradual, and you get better and better. And then I had my own agency, but that was kind of like still doing the same thing. Like I was still just listing and selling. I had all of these extra responsibilities that I had to fit in. And the other thing too, why it had all been done before, I suppose. But with Urban X, we're really breaking new ground. You know, it's a bit like, say, like SpaceX is like landing their rockets. Like that's new, right? So if they drop a few and they blow some up, well, you kind of understand that. You know, we administer over 100 agencies around Australia, from Northern Territory, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, and WA. Every single state has different legislation, different forms, different processes, different trust accounts, different licensing, different rules. Everything's different, right? And so, you know, people say to me sometimes, we go to another country. I'm like, just going to another state is like going to a different country for us, because it's, you know, other than being fundamentally the same, you're still administering a listing and a sale. How you do it and the process and you know, so everything about it really is like quite different. So yeah, there's just been a huge amount to learn as we've been doing something that no one else has done. And I mean, you know, we administer thousands and thousands of transactions a year. You know, a successful office might sell, let's just say a very successful office might sell 500 properties a year. I mean, that would be a very, very, very successful office. I think we're looking after between 6,000 and 8,000 transactions a year.
Wow.
So, you know, to put that in
Huge volume.
Yeah, huge volume. You know, maybe, I don't know exactly, but like maybe the average office in Australia does 100, say 120, 10 deals a month, something like that.
Wow.
You know, so like for us, 6,000 to 8,000 a year is monumental. And so, yeah, the scale and what you've got to be able to handle at that level. Yeah, there's been a lot of ups and downs along the last 5.5 years.
Yeah, I can imagine. So have you guys had to then reinvent the business at what, every year stage?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep. And what does that look like internally? How did you go about that?
You know when you've reached the limit of the systems that you did have, because you get the speed wobbles. So, you know, you feel the pain, the calls are coming in, all sorts of things are going wrong. So you feel it, you know when you're there. And really the first step is identifying what's going on, what's going wrong, what's causing this. And it's definitely not starting again, but it's looking at what you've got and then sort of doing a wholesale review of that to find a better way forward. Yeah. So,
But this is not just reinventing the business, because I'm assuming you've touched on the fact that process needed to change. What about Dan?
I've never been so stretched and pushed doing anything in my life than this. And you have to grow. You will grow or die, really. They're your options. And so, I look back now on sort of the journey that's been, and, like we're still, I don't know, maybe 1/10 into the journey or something like that. So, but if I reflect on like the journey so far, I came into this as a real estate agent that had a real estate agency that then was in, like a world of pain trying to manage all of that and keep listing and selling, to identify that there was an opportunity to then starting this. I've got a CFO, we've got a board, we have investors. Now, I don't know about any of this kind of stuff, a capital raising. How do you do a capital raising? We've got, some of the best legal advisors in Australia. We've got 13 software developers that work for us full time. We have brand experts, digital marketing team. It's like so much, right? And so you've got to get knowledgeable about so much, and like one of those things as an example is our software development team. I didn't know the first thing about software development. Like if you open my MacBook, I've got Mail, Chrome.
It's simple.
Yeah, Zoom. It's simple, right? And then all of a sudden, like you're leading this dev team and you think, shit, I need to know what I'm talking about if I'm going to lead this team. So then like you can just get on YouTube, how to lead a software development team. And there's just videos after videos after videos that, talk about how to lead a software. And so you just got to upskill on so many things. And that's like a really cool part of the journey, because you get to expand so much as a founder as you're scaling a business. I think, or you don't. And then one of the things I got taught was that your business will never outgrow you as the leader. So, you've got to continue to be better and more skilled. Otherwise you'll end up being the bottleneck in your own business. I suppose then you either get out and bring someone else in, or you just keep growing and try and stay ahead of it.
At what point or where did you go to upskill yourself?
4 things. A lot of reading, mainly on leadership. I think out of everything you've got to learn as you're growing a company, the number one is leadership. At least I believe that I've got to be the best possible leader that I can be to continue growing the company, overcoming the challenges, building and keeping a great team. That for me is like super important. And as I said, like I was a real estate agent. So I was a real estate agent that became a principal of an office that now has, about 80 employees and clients all over the country. And I just think like leadership's one of those things that what's leadership? There's heaps of books that you can read. And I think like I always just start with like what I'm struggling with, and I try and upskill on those.
So you read for the problem.
Sort of read for the problem. Yeah. Yeah. Like you can read books on scaling your business, and you can learn from people that have scaled businesses, and you can read on how to lead a dev team. Like there's heaps of, whatever your sort of issue is, I find that there's great resources out there. So a lot of reading. Mentors I find are really important. People often ask me about mentors like they're some kind of guru. My view on mentors is that you should have many mentors, and those mentors are a bit like those books in that if you've got a specific problem, that's ideally what that mentor would be there for. So I've got heaps of mentors now, not just like one Yoda that I talk to that knows everything. No, if it's about software, I've got someone that I'll go and talk to. If it's about, like raising capital, I've got someone that I'll go and talk to. If it's about legal, I've got someone that I'll go and talk to. So there's just like all of these mentors around me that I'll reach out to all the time, and still be that same sponge that I was when I first got into real estate 22 or 3, whatever years ago, and like that person that I was that hired the assistant, like on my drive back from the Sunshine Coast. It's only like a bit over an hour, but like got it done. Like it's the same. If you can find great mentors and you trust them, why second guess or take a year to think about the advice? Like just do it. So find mentors and then act. And I actually find too, if you want a mentor, you don't have to just listen blindly to what they say, but if it makes sense, then just listen and do it. Like there's nothing more, I think, rewarding for a mentor to see that the person that you're mentoring is actually doing the shit that you're trying to help them with. But I think if you find people you trust and they give you great advice, give them the respect to actually follow through on that, and they'll give you more because you're doing it. So that's 2. Yeah, 3, I mentioned like YouTube. There's so much you can learn online now. Like I'm sure there's never been a time where you can learn more online than you can today. I think there's almost nothing that you could type into YouTube and not find tutorials for. And then 4th, a lot of my team is so much smarter than I am. Our head of development's so much smarter than I am. Our CFO, our general manager of operations, like all the people in our business are so much smarter than I am. And there's, people sort of say surround yourself with people smarter than you, but it is true, because I know a little bit about all the things that they know, but they know heaps about what they know. And so as long as I can lead them and keep them engaged and like on the right track, which is my job, and to have that vision of what is the right track, then actually I don't need to know everything that they know, as long as they can know where to direct their skills.
And
Does
so
that make sense?
absolutely. And so do you have a process for finding a great talent?
My co-founder is brilliant at that. Like, people is her thing. So she really, really helps with that. But then like nearly all of our leaders we've grown from within, so they've started in more junior roles. And that's like been a real beautiful thing over the last 5.5 years, is that people that have been with us on that whole or nearly that whole journey. And so not only have they grown so much as people, but because they've grown so much as well, I guess they've stuck with us because they're growing. And, because it's such a fast growing company, I mean, we got named, I think it was last year or the year before, as the 24th fastest growing company in Australia by the AFR.
Phenomenal.
It's painful, but the challenges grow you so much. And I'm always reminding not only myself, but my team as well, that we can go and work somewhere boring if you want, that's not growing. Like, every day will be the same. Here, yes, we have very challenging moments, but like when you look back, you're like, whoa, we've come a long way. And as I said, you get to grow on that. Yeah. So
individually and as a team.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, 100%.
And so would you attribute that to that as one of the biggest reasons why your staff stick with you?
Yeah, I guess you'd have to ask them that, but we definitely are always looking for their growth path. And as we grow and we need, like, we didn't even have a board originally. We didn't even have a leadership team originally. Like, there's so many things that we didn't have because maybe we didn't need them, or maybe we just didn't know, but like now we do. So we've got executives and we've got like a leadership team and all this stuff. And so, people are getting to grow up into these positions. I also, as I say, try to like find people that are really good at something and then just let them do it. So like one of my team members asked for something yesterday, and I said, look, the answer to all of these things you ask for is nearly always going to be yes. Like, I will try my hardest to never say no, because if you're asking for it, there must be a valid reason. And like, I'll absolutely do my hardest to not say no. And she said, I really appreciate that. And I think, well, I'd really appreciate that too, because it's annoying when you need something, but then the boss is saying, well, you can't have it. Shit, you're just slowing things down here or holding me back. So I do respect when they ask for things, and I do nearly always try to say yes to those things.
Interesting. And is there one piece of advice you'd give to another young entrepreneur starting out?
Do it would be
just act.
Yeah, just act. Yeah, because I guess I get to talk to a lot of entrepreneurs now, particularly in real estate, because maybe 20% or thereabouts of the people that come to us already have their own agency and are just like how I was, sort of stretched and just want us to take over that part that we do, which just like really frees them up to get back to what they're good at. And then about 80% are successful agents that work somewhere that want to go out on their own. So, they're really entrepreneurs. And so I think the conversations that we have with them would probably like relate to a lot of people across just like all industries. The number one issue that I see holding people back is their own self-belief. Just the question of what if it fails? And I always say, why don't you just change the question to, what if this is more successful than your wildest dreams? Like, a really great question that I ask, I think it's great. A question that I ask people is, let's just say, I don't know, let's say you go and see a fortune teller. I've never been, I don't really believe in it, but let's just say you go and see a fortune teller, and this fortune teller's famous. Like, they're famous. They consult to presidents and world leaders because everything they say comes true. And you go and see this fortune teller, and they say, they look in their crystal ball and they say, this thing is going to be more successful than you could possibly imagine. This thing that you're thinking about doing, would you do it? And the answer 100% of the time when I ask that question is yes. And I say, so then therefore you don't think it's going to be. And they're like, oh, yeah, right. Because you've just told me if you knew it was going to be super successful, you do it, but you're on the edge or you're thinking of not doing it. Therefore, you don't think it's going to be that successful. And it's quite eye-opening for a lot of people to go, oh yeah, shit, I'm like convincing myself I'm going to fail and therefore I'm holding myself back. And I would just say, just do it, because what's the worst that can happen? And it is good to have a backup plan and it's good to have a way out. My way out when I started my own agency was, I'm going to give this 12 months. You know, I'm 7 years into real estate. I got a long way to go. And if this all turns to shit, it'll be like my gap year in London, you know, it'll be one crap year. It's not going to be a zero. Maybe it'll be 50% of like where I was at. You know, you're not going to like, it's not like no one's going to touch you, right? So, you know, maybe it'll be 50%. So it'll be a pretty ordinary year, but it won't kill me. It won't be fatal. And then I'll just go back and I'll go back to my old boss and say, oh, that bombed, or I'll go somewhere else. You know, any good agent's being pitched every week to go somewhere else. So, you know, if you're good, you'll have no shortage of options. So I just thought, well, I'll give it a year and I'll see how it goes. And if it all turns to shit, then like there's plenty of ways out. And yeah, I mean, I resigned on a Friday. I called a bunch of people that I knew that were getting ready to sell on the Saturday. All of them were so excited that I started my own business. I listed every single one of those properties and I sold one off market, and I drove home 24 hours after resigning. And I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever done. What the hell was I doing for the last couple of years? So yeah, I'm not sort of saying be reckless. Like, it is good to like know what your strategic sort of exit might be if it's not right. But once you've got that, then just do it, because the thinking about it and the hypothesizing about it, in actual fact, the longer you think about it and the longer you hypothesize about it, the bigger that monster. I mean, Tony Robbins says, when's the best time to kill a monster? When it's a little baby monster. You don't want to kill it when it's Godzilla. You want to kill it when it's like first hatches out of the egg, you know? It's the same with those negative thoughts. If you don't kill those negative thoughts or sort of push to the side those negative thoughts at the very beginning, they just grow. And so people that think about going into business for a year or two or 3 or 4, it's just the monster's just growing and growing and growing. And then in the end, they just never do it. And then, and the amount of people that have said to me, oh, Dan, I wish I met you 20 years ago. You know, I would have loved to have done this, but they didn't. And now they're sort of wishing that they did. So that would really be the first thing I'd say, would be just do it. And the probably the second and last thing that I'd say is that like, you'll be okay. It'll be harder and more challenging than you expect it's going to be, but that's how you grow. And you know, like, I often sort of think back, if I knew Urban X was going to be as hard as it has been 5.5 years ago, would I have done it? Probably not. Wow. Probably not. But having done it, am I grateful? Absolutely. Because it's changed me as a person. And that's really like the coolest part about it. You just think, I think when you're like looking forward, you think, oh shit, that sounds hard. But looking back, you're like, wow, I've come so far because of that decision. Yeah. So it'll be harder, but it'll be worth it.
Dan Argent, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.